All right, so today we're going to dive into this company, Faida Ventures LTD.
Okay.
And full disclosure, right off the bat, all we've got is the info they put out themselves.
Right. Always good to keep in mind.
So no independent reviews or anything yet, just their own website and marketing stuff.
Makes sense. They're pretty new on the scene.
Yeah, exactly. But what they're claiming is pretty interesting. So.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it definitely piqued my interest too when you sent this over.
Okay, so basically, they say they've got these like super sophisticated trading systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
But instead of managing your money directly, like a lot of firms do,
Yeah.
they give you access to their systems.
Mm.
But you keep your own broker, you keep control of your account.
Interesting. So they're more like providing the trading expertise.
Yeah, exactly. Like they make the trades, or their system does, I should say.
Through your own account.
Right, so you're not handing over your whole portfolio to them.
Hmm. I can see the appeal for some folks, that level of control.
Right, like
Yeah.
some people are just not comfortable with that whole, like, give me all your money, trust me thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Lots of folks want to stay hands-on.
But then there's the fee structure, which is where it gets even more interesting. They do profit sharing.
Okay. So they only take a cut if your account grows.
Exactly. No growth, they don't get paid.
Mm.
Sounds pretty good on the surface, right?
It does, yeah. But the devil's always in the details with these things. Like, how do they calculate profit? What's
Yeah.
their percentage?
Big questions there. And then there's the whole AI thing, which they talk about a lot.
Yeah, I saw that. Their systems are all AI driven, apparently.
Yeah, so we need to dig into that too. What does that actually mean in practice?
Mhm.
And, how much can you really trust an algorithm with your money?
Huge questions for sure.
Okay, so first up, let's dig into this control and transparency thing they emphasize so much.
Right. Sounds good.
Because they say you maintain control.
Yeah.
Right. But if their system is doing the trading, how much control do you really have?
Yeah, it's kind of a tricky balance, isn't it? Like, they're granting you access to their systems, but ultimately their algorithms are calling the shots.
Right. And they talk about transparency, being able to see what's happening in your account.
Right, but what does that actually look like? Like, what kind of platform are you using to track your investments?
Yeah.
How much detail do you get on the trades being made? Can you set limits?
Exactly. Because transparency isn't just about saying you're transparent. It's about giving the investor the tools and the information to actually verify it.
Couldn't agree more. Like, if they're really serious about this control and transparency thing, they need to be super upfront about how it all works in practice.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's talk about this profit sharing model because I'm super curious about how that actually plays out.
Yeah, I'm with you. On the surface, it sounds great, right? They only make money when you do.
Yeah.
But the specifics are crucial here.
Yeah, like how do they determine what counts as profit? What's the percentage they take? Do they have any minimums or anything like that?
And then they mention this high watermark system. Do you know how that works?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure.
So basically, with a high watermark system, they only take a percentage of the profits that exceed your account's previous highest value.
Okay.
Like, say your account goes up to $10,000, then drops to $8,000, and then climbs back up to $12,000. They wouldn't get a cut until you hit that $12,000 mark, because that's above the previous high of $10,000.
Ah, I see. So it's like they're incentivized to not just make you money, but to keep pushing your account to new highs.
Exactly. Which can be good for the investor because it aligns their interests.
Right.
But it also makes the whole calculation a bit more complex.
It does. So you really want to make sure you understand all the ins and outs of that system before signing up.
Absolutely. Don't just take their word for it. See the actual agreement, have someone look it over, that kind of thing.
Okay, now let's talk about the brains of the operation. They're AI-driven EAs. Can you break down for our listeners, maybe who haven't heard that term before, what an EA is?
Sure. So EA stands for Expert Advisor, and it's basically a piece of software, right? That's programmed to automatically execute trades based on a set of rules.
Like if this happens, then do that kind of thing.
Exactly. So you're basically setting up these instructions for the EA to follow. Like, if the price of gold goes above this amount, then buy this many shares, that sort of thing.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does the AI part fit in?
Well, that's where it gets more complex. Traditional EAs, they just follow those preset rules no matter what. But Faida Ventures LTD is claiming that their EAs are driven by AI, artificial intelligence.
Right, which they make a big deal about on their website.
And it's a big claim, because what that means is the system isn't just blindly following those rules. It's supposed to be constantly learning, adapting its strategies based on the market data it's seeing.
So in theory, it's getting smarter over time.
Right. At least that's the idea. that it can analyze, tons of data, identify patterns that a human trader might miss, and then adjust the trading strategies accordingly.
Hmm. But isn't that a lot of trust to put in an algorithm, though? I mean, even if it's getting smarter, how do you know what it's doing and why?
That's the big question, isn't it? Like with any automated system, especially one driven by AI, there's a degree of what we call black box involved. You might see the trades happening, you might see the results, but you don't necessarily understand the logic behind it.
Right. And even if they say they're being transparent, how can you really be transparent about something that, like, you don't even fully understand yourself?
That's where things get tricky for sure. And that's why even if you're intrigued by the whole AI thing, you got to be extra careful with risk management.
Which they do mention. They emphasize their 24/7 monitoring. They say you can revoke access at any time if you're not happy with what's happening.
Right. But in practice, how quickly can you react? Like if things start going south, how much damage could be done before you're able to pull the plug?
That's a good point. And, we have to bring up the elephant in the room.
Mhm.
They're not a regulated entity.
Yeah, that's a big red flag for me, honestly. Because when you're dealing with a regulated financial institution, you at least have some protections in place, right? There's oversight, there's recourse if things go wrong.
Right. You can complain to somebody.
Exactly. But with a non-regulated entity like Faida Ventures LTD, it's basically, buyer beware. You're relying on their internal controls, on their word. And while they might be perfectly trustworthy, it just adds another layer of risk.
So for someone who's listening to this, thinking about checking out Faida Ventures LTD, what would you say are the key things to keep in mind?
I'd say first and foremost, really think about your own investment philosophy and your risk tolerance. Are you comfortable with a hands-off approach? Do you believe in the potential of AI-driven trading? Because if the answer to those is no, then it's probably not a good fit.
Right. Doesn't mean it's a bad company. Just might not be right for you.
Exactly. But even if you're thinking, yeah, this sounds kind of cool, you got to be realistic about the risks, the lack of transparency, the reliance on a non-regulated entity, the potential difficulty of actually monitoring and controlling your investments.
Because it sounds like a really interesting model, but it's not without its downsides.
Not at all. And honestly, that's the case with any investment. There's no such thing as a guaranteed win, right? But in a world where algorithms are playing a bigger and bigger role in finance, it's more important than ever to understand what you're getting into.
Because it's not just about returns anymore. It's about how much control you're willing to give up.
Exactly. And whether you trust not just the company, but the technology itself.
Food for thought for sure.